Part 1.
You will hear part of a conversation between a customer and the owner of an IT store. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 8. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 8.
So, before we go any further, can we just confirm what has been agreed so far, as it's starting to get a little complicated?
Certainly. Tell you what, why don't I start to make out the invoice? Should I address it to you personally, or is there a business name you'd like me to use?
We trade under the name Ben and Di Enterprises.
Okay. Now, as you were talking to one of my sales reps to start with, I'm going to put him down as the contact on the invoice. That way, he'll get the commission on this sale, you see.
His name was Rowan Laver, is that right? Rather peculiar name, but a lovely man.
You almost got it. It's Rome, as in the city, and Laver, Laver. Your order number is 6589B521. You're paying in full, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Today's the 4th of April, so we'll put a due date of the 10th on there. Now, do you remember your order details?
Yes. First there was the filing cabinets.
Of course, for a rate of £15 each. Didn't you order print paper as well?
Yes, we're taking 20 glossy photo paper bundles. What's the unit price again?
It works out at £20 per bundle and £400 in total.
And Rome said we could do a deal on the software packages, isn't that right?
Yes. Seeing as you bought 5 at once, we'll reduce the unit price to £100 from £120, leaving us with a total amount of £500. I needn't remind you that there is an additional fixed charge totalling £40 specifically for the software installation.
Of course.
So, getting to a total figure then including sales tax, 16% VAT is added on. That gives us £1,160 by my reckoning.
By VAT, do you mean sales tax? Isn't that 10%?
It's 25% on some products and 10% on others. We work out an aggregate figure and apply it to all goods sold. In this case, it was 16%, as I've mentioned.
Fair enough.
Before listening to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 9 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 9 to 10.
Listen, I know the due date isn't for a week, but do you mind if I write you out a cheque today?
Not at all. You can make it out to me, Michael McCloskey.
How do you spell that then?
What, McCloskey? It's capital M-C, capital C-L-O-S-K-E-Y.
Got it. And how much should I make it out for in total?
£1,500, please.
£1,500?
Yes, that's including my consultancy service fees.
Oh, I almost forgot about that. Let me make a note here on the cheque. Includes consultancy fees. Now we're almost done.
That is the end of Part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You'll hear a monologue about a guided tour to London.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Hello, can I just have your attention for a minute? Thank you. My name is Mary Golding. Some of you may recognize me. I used to be a lecturer here at the college, but I changed jobs last year and now I work as the student officer. Okay, well, I'm in today to tell you about a guided tour that we've got going to, London. Well, this will be a good chance for those of you who haven't been to London before to have a look at this beautiful city. I think those of you who come will thoroughly enjoy it. The trip is going to be for 5 days, from the 31st of March, which is a Saturday, to the 4th of April, the following Wednesday. We'll be taking a medium-sized coach, so there'll be 45 places on that. Last time it was a minibus with only 16 places, which proved insufficient for students' needs. According to the London Development Agency, London has over 200 museums, 500 cinema screens, 108 music halls, and 5 symphony orchestras. Needless to say, we can't see it all in one day. Here are some major sites we are going to tackle on the first visit to London. On the first day we're in London, we'll be going on a boat trip up the River Thames and up the London Eye. The Eye is a giant modern Ferris wheel which stands on the south of the river across from the Houses of Parliament. The boat cruise is included in the cost of the trip, so you won't need to worry about spending extra money, but you have to pay to ride the Eye to gaze out over the vast city. After that, we'll visit the Houses of Parliament. The Houses of Parliament, also known as Westminster Palace, was designed in the Gothic style. One of London's famous landmarks, Big Ben, the clock tower named for its 13-ton bell, is also found here. You can have a free visit up there. I think you all know Westminster Abbey, one of the most visited Christian churches in the world. There is no admission charge for this, but there are lots of souvenir shops around, so you might need some money for those. On the second day, we'll be going to the British Museum. The oldest museum in the world is also the most visited site in London. You have to pay to get in there, but it's not expensive.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
Also the most visited site in London. You have to pay to get in there, but it's not expensive. The museum's newly constructed £100 million Great Court, a 2-acre square enclosed by a glass roof, is the largest covered public square in Europe. It is called the Great Court. On the third day, you'll be free to do whatever you like. Personally, I recommend the Natural History Museum. It has over 68 million specimens. Fun exhibits include the Blue Whale exhibit, Rainforest Gallery, Earthquake Experience, and dinosaur displays. The Globe Theatre is a place worthy of visiting. The original Globe Theatre, where actors performed William Shakespeare's plays, burned down in 1613. The newly reconstructed Globe, however, copies original drawings of the 16th century's building's details and uses many of the same techniques and materials. Theatregoers can see performances of Shakespeare's plays, such as Romeo and Juliet and Much Ado About Nothing. If you'd like, can you sign up on this form on the student notice board by Friday? It'll be first come, first served.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a discussion between two students, Rosie and Mike, and a university tutor. In the first part of the discussion, they're talking about a survey they have conducted on local entertainment. First, look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen to the first part of the discussion and answer questions 21 to 26.
Good morning, everyone. Well, I think we can start straight away by getting Rosie and Mike to do their presentation. Would you like to start, Rosie?
Yes. Well, we've done a survey on local entertainment. Basically, we tried to find out how students feel about the entertainment in the town and how much they use it.
Yes, so we've called our project Out and About.
Yes, that's a good title, Out and About.
We wanted to find out how well students use the entertainment facilities in town, whether they get to see the latest plays, films, that kind of thing.
Now, we have our own facilities on campus, of course.
Oh, yes. We deliberately omitted those as we really wanted to examine outside entertainment in the town as opposed to on the university campus.
Actually, there were a lot of areas to choose from, but in the end, we limited ourselves to looking at 3 general categories: cinema, theatre and music.
Right.
OK, well, first of all, cinema. In the town, there are 3 main places where you can see films. There's the new multi-screen cinema complex, the old park cinema and a late-night Odeon.
So, if you look at this chart, in terms of audience size, the multi-screen complex accounts for 75% of all cinema seats. The park cinema accounts for 20% of seats, and the late-night Odeon has just 5% of seats.
As you probably know, the complex and the park show all the latest films, while the late-night cinema tends to show cult films. So, when we interviewed the students, we thought the complex would be the most popular choice of cinema. But surprisingly, it was the late-night Odeon.
Yeah, and most students said that if they wanted to see a new film, they waited for it to show at the park, because the complex is more expensive and further out of town, so you have to pay more to get there as well.
Yes, and that adds to the cost, of course, and detracts from the popularity, evidently.
Well, next, we looked at theatres. The results here were interesting because, as you know, there's a theatre on campus which is popular, but there's also the Stage Theatre in town, which is very old and architecturally quite beautiful. And there's the large modern theatre, the Ashtop, that has recently been built.
So you just looked at the 2 theatres in town?
Yes, but the thing about the theatres is that there's a whole variety of seat prices. Also, the types of performance vary, so students tend to buy seats at both and like using both for different reasons. And if they want cheap seats at the Ashtop, they can just sit further from the front.
What we did find that was very interesting is that there are periods during the year when students seem to go to the theatre and periods when they go to the cinema. And we really think that's to do with budget. If you look at this graph, you can see that there's a peak around November, December when they go to the theatre more, and then a period in April, May when neither is particularly popular. And then theatre viewing seems to trail off virtually, while the cinema becomes quite popular in June, July.
I think you're probably right about your conclusions.
In the second part of the discussion, Rosie and Mike talk about different music clubs. Look at questions 27 to 30 first. listen carefully and answer questions 27 to 30.
Well, lastly, we looked at music, and this time we were really investigating the sort of small music clubs that offer things like folk or specialise in local bands.
So not musicals as such?
That's right.
We looked at 3 small music venues and we examined the quality of the entertainment and the venue and gave a ranking for these. A cross, meaning that the quality was poor, a tick, meaning it was okay, and 2 ticks for excellent. First of all, the Blues Club, which obviously specialises in blues music. This was a pretty small place and the seating was minimal, so we didn't give that a very good rating.
No, we don't recommend that one, really.
Then the Sansu, which plays a lot of South American music. It was a big place, very lively, good performers, so 2 ticks for that one. The Pier Hotel is a folk venue, a good place for local and up-and-coming folk artists to play. Not the best of venues, as it's in a basement and a bit dark, but the quality of the entertainment was reasonable and the lighting was very warm, so we felt it deserved an average rating. Now finally, there's the Bald Rock Cafe, which features big rock bands and is pretty popular with students, and we enjoyed ourselves there as well, so top marks for that one.
And then, did you get any information from the students as to which of the clubs they preferred?
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You are going to hear a talk given by Jim Allen. He is going to share some of his findings of his research. Now you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning. Today we'll be hailing from Jim Allen, who will be sharing some of the findings of his research project from last term. Jim.
Thanks. Well, to start with, a little bit of background about the project. As you can see, our title is something that is relevant to everybody in this part of the world: water safety. These days, there's a lot more to water safety because of the increasing number and range of boats and other things people use on public waterways. I'd become interested through reports on radio about the number of incidents involving small powerboats and individual watercraft such as jet skis. It seemed to me that because these craft were essentially recreational and didn't require licenses to use, there was very little opportunity to influence the users towards being safety conscious. So, I decided to make this the focus of the project. For the research, we mainly relied upon talking to people, asking them questions in preference to using a written questionnaire. We interviewed a wide range of people at a number of popular swimming locations over 2 consecutive weekends and asked them what they'd observed or experienced themselves. The respondents were both male and female, but the men were just slightly in the majority. We were pleased with their willingness to talk about the subject, and all told, interviewed 145 people over the 2 weekends. So, what were the findings? As you can see, 86% of people reported having had some type of problem. A surprisingly large percentage, 27%, commented that they had found it necessary to shout at an offending powerboat, but the main type of problem was the deafening sound that some of the boats made. On occasions, this led to swimmers deciding to move to another location. So what strategies did people adopt to ensure their own comfort and safety? Let's have a look at the figures. First, it was noticeable that there were often distinctly different answers between men and women. It was mainly the women, for example, who said they should try to choose places where boats couldn't go, whereas it was usually the men who said you shouldn't have to move if you were there first, so you should shout at them if necessary. Both men and, it was women who said you should call the authorities if the situation gets too dangerous or the powerboat drivers are acting irresponsibly. Then, I had thought it would be mainly women, but both sexes made the point that above all, it's important to get children away from any possible danger. Men were very aware that jet skis could be unpredictable in inexperienced hands. They also made the point that it's much safer to have your car nearby and clearly visible to any watercraft if you're swimming in a relatively remote spot. Finally, wearing visible clothing, men didn't think it was quite as important as women, but both gave it a high safety rating. When we asked them what they thought the government should do to help solve the problem,
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.